Hi everyone, my name is Megan Murray, and today I'm going to be discussing the interview that I conducted with an informatics nurse. The informatics nurse that I interviewed name is Miss Margarita Legetsby, and she holds the position of Senior Clinical Nurse Informatics Specialist at Emanate Health. Emanate Health is a healthcare organization that comprises of 3 individual hospitals. To start the interview, I discussed with Miss Legetsby her clinical background, which led her to the position that she holds today. Miss Legetsby has been a registered nurse for over 30 years, the last 10 of which she spent in clinical informatics. Miss Legetsby started her journey as a bedside nurse, working in a medical surgical unit, and has transitioned to a variety of different floors, including cardiovascular specialties, as well as the intensive care units. In addition, Miss Legetsby has worked in a variety of different hospitals, including rural hospitals in the state of Hawaii, as well as world-renowned hospitals, including USC. It was at USC that she first transitioned to the role of informatics nurse. Ms. Legetsby states that she's always had a knack for computers, and in addition, while she was a bedside nurse, she always personally modified her cardexes to include pertinent information about the patient and remove information that she deemed unnecessary. Ms. Legetsby felt that she could have a positive role as an informatics nurse in making documentation easier for bedside nurses. Ms. Legetsby states that through her journey as an informatics nurse, she has learned every step of the way. There are always new updates to software, and she does believe that it's her diverse bedside nursing background that helped the transition for her to informatics nurse. The next question that I discussed with Ms. Legetsby was the value of informatics as a driving force in the delivery of nursing care at my facility. Ms. Legetsby stated that she felt that informatics acts as a liaison between the clinical side of nursing and the software side of nursing. As a previous bedside nurse, Ms. Legetsby understood that everything in the field is fast-paced and that it is easy for nurses to bypass very important documentation. She felt that it's her role as an informatics nurse to make documentation, especially the pertinent information needed, to be easy for nurses. It's important to make sure that the information on the screen is easily presentable and that nurses are able to look into the chart and identify what is needed quickly and reliably. In a non-clinical aspect, I learned that informatics is also one of the departments that collects information reviewed by regulatory bodies to meet quality standards. I learned from Ms. Legetsby that especially after the introduction of Obamacare, quality indicators are directly linked to reimbursement, and it is through the data generated in the software that the indicators are known if they are met or not. Basically, quality of care, as reflected in documentation and outcomes, is directly tied to reimbursement. Obviously, reimbursement is incredibly important to all hospitals. Therefore, the role of the informatics nurse is incredibly important as well. The next question that I discussed with Ms. Legetsby was what safeguards and decision-making support tools are embedded in patient care technology systems at my facility to support safe practices. So Ms. Legetsby, one of her initial projects at my facility was to ensure that documentation includes mandatory queries that nurses must fill out when documenting. For example, when a patient is discharged, I have to answer 5 or 6 questions that specifically state that I did certain things. For example, was the IV removed properly? Did the patient understand the discharge information? I am not able to discharge the patient out of the system unless I answer these questions. So this is very important for me as well as my license, as if anybody were to pull up my chart in the later years, it shows that these certain criteria were met and documented to show that I safely discharged the patient. The next question that we discussed was how patient care technologies have improved at my facility. So this is actually something that I just learned by interviewing Miss Margarita Legetsby. My facility is going to be making the transition from portable WOWs to iPhone-type documentation systems. So Ms. Legatsby's current project is linking our electronic health record to iPhone-like documentation devices. She states that on this device, I can scan the patient, I can scan medications, I can document wounds, I can input vitals. She states that having this handheld device will make patient care a lot easier to document. The next question that we discussed was, what group of healthcare workers rely on you to collect high quality information? So as I previously stated, it's very important that the documentation indicates that quality standards were met, and it is through this that Ms. Legatsby works very closely with the Performance Quality Department to ensure that our information is readily available for when JCO arrives. On our last inspection, Ms. Legatsby stated that one very important piece that we were dinged on by JCO was physician signature on consent forms. Ms. Legatsby researched this subject and found that currently there are numerous places that the physician can document consent. In a nurse's note, in his notes, in paper, on the consent form, and therefore JCO was often missing that while the physician did sign consent, they weren't locating it in the correct spot. Therefore, Ms. Legatsby currently is implementing a new type of documentation specifically with the physicians, whereas any type of procedure, the consent was going to be located in a specific place in the chart. This way, JCO, no matter when they come, they know exactly where that documentation is and that it's easily accessible. We then discussed if my organization was going to be going on a magnet journey. Ms. Legatsby stated at this time she had no indication that we would be taking that journey. The next question that we discussed was how her relationship is with our information technology department. Ms. Legatsby stated that essentially they are one department, they are incredibly integrated, and they have weekly team meetings. She says that it's very important that when she gets an inquiry, if she does not know the answer, she needs to know the roles of all the individuals around her in order to properly filter that question. She does state that they work together very closely and rely on each other, and since their roles are often intertwined, it is very important to know her responsibility versus others and when to say no. The next question that I discussed was, what projects have you created that directly influenced patient care? So Ms. Legatsby, one of her primary projects with Emanate Health was on Foley catheters and how long they were remaining in patients. So Ms. Legatsby started by capturing pertinent data regarding when Foleys were being used, why they were being used, and when they were being removed. She then analyzed this data and sent it to infectious disease in order to determine when the length of the indwelling increases the risk of infection. After this, she modified our documentation and our policies to ensure that at this certain length, unless absolutely indicated, the patient needs to have that Foley removed. So this project helps decrease our risk of CAUTIs and increase our safe patient care. The last question that I discussed with Ms. Legatsby was, what challenges has she had in dealing with other disciplines who might not understand the role of an informatics nurse. She said offhand she does not feel any animosity or any confusion about her role. However, when COVID hit and we got our first rapid COVID bedside tests, the informatics department was not brought in until the devices and machines had already been purchased. So then it was the role of the informatics team in order to correlate when scanning the patient's barcode, does it enter the EHR, what issues were they having, and informatics had to kind of take a step back and put everything on hold to get this figured out. She felt that if the informatics team had been brought in on the project earlier, they could have bypassed a lot of the problems that we initially had with correlating patient data to patient tests. After completing this interview, I thought back on how this was going to impact my role as a master prepared nurse. To be honest, prior to this interview, I really did not know the role of an informatics nurse or their responsibilities. By completing this interview, I was able to better understand their significant and complex role in the healthcare system. This knowledge allows me to better correlate documentation with quality care indicators. As a master prepared nurse, I hope to eventually be in a position of leadership where benchmarks and performance improvements will be vital to my role. And I now understand that I can rely on my informatics nurse to help me with all of that information. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I am excited to watch yours. Thank you.